I'm Michael Fox, and this is the Prospector News Podcast. And I have joining me today the President and CEO of TUDOR Gold, Ken Konkin. Welcome, Ken.
Thank you very much, Michael. Glad to be on.
Yes, I'm happy to have you here. It's been a long time coming to get you on board with the show. The first question I always ask is for new investors and people that aren't familiar with your company. Let's give them the 10,000-foot view of who TUDOR Gold is.
TUDOR Gold is actually a fairly small, tightly held company that started back in 2016 with the startup of Walter Storm, who was coming off success of Osisko, the Osisko discovery, and I was coming off my success with Pretium. So I joined forces with a very small group of people that had this vision of Treaty Creek like-minded to myself. So I was finishing off at Pretium at the Brucejack Lake just to the south of us, and joined forces with Walter in 2019.
Perfect. That leads to a good point. I'm always a big believer in following a jockey. I like to follow people who have had success in this industry because they're more likely to repeat that success. So tell us more about Walter and yourself and the successes you guys have had in the past and how that led you to this Treaty Creek project.
Yeah, I'm basically a geologist that's traveled the world hunting for very large silver deposits initially with Silver Standard, but I cut my teeth up here in the Golden Triangle decades ago, back in the early 80s, and had multiple discoveries. And one of them, ironically, was here on the project. I'd discovered a very high-grade gold copper showing, and everybody looked at it, and including me, and tried hammering it through the direction of what the current Goldstorm deposit is. And I think now we can all agree that it actually leads the other way to yet another zone called Perfect Storm here at Treaty Creek. But however, with my tenure, almost 20 years with Bob Quartermain, Joe Osnick, and Ken McNaughton, we were able to get almost 2 billion ounces of gold in ground inventoried through various deals and staking and projects that we explored. One of my better projects, I think, that we did a joint venture with Pan American with Ross Beatty's team in southern Argentina. We came up with some really nice structural interpretations that proved to be true and really put that deposit into play. So yeah, I've got a lot of experience with this type of a project where you take it from basically greenfields to an advanced state of exploration, right up to construction and development and finally production, which is what we did ultimately at the spin out of Pretium. And I was the guy that was the person in charge of the Snowfield deposit at the time with Silver Standard, and finally looking at the Brucejack Lake district in the immediate area, hunting for what would be anything with precious metals, mainly silver at the time. But when we discovered the gold, we didn't get the credits that we deserved in the market for Silver Standard. So we decided to basically spin out Pretium. So myself, Bob Quartermain, led that with Joe Osnick and Ken McNaughton, basically leaving to start up Pretium, and that was a super successful story. And ironically, at the same timeline, I think Walter was just coming off his success at Osisko Lake. So I think that all the tumblers in the universe clicked into place, and here we are, back to right where I started my career, finishing it off with putting the Rubik's Cube back into place.
Perfect. And Walter himself was no slouch as well. What was his background?
Well, Walter was a business person. I mean, he had forestry, he had road building, he had owned the largest pulp paper mill in Nanaimo. He built the road to Cyprus. I mean, he'd done mining ventures in Africa. He was very much a believer in treaty when he saw it. So I really have a lot of respect for Walter and what he's done to set up basically TUDOR Gold, a company that is very little known about it because we were very quiet as we went about our business. But when I started in 2019, we had a nice fateful phone call from Mr. Eric Sprott. And once I had a couple discussions with Eric about the potential of the ground we had, he wanted to invest and invested strongly. So he came across the board with our entire company and project and invested about 20% of the program here. So he's a big believer of it, a strong supporter, and now is really one of the biggest driving forces for us for the success we've had over the last 3-4 years here for sure.
Okay, so Treaty Creek is up north in the Golden Triangle region of British Columbia. Tell me more about that project.
Right. It's in my tenure with Silver Standard, I actually traveled the world looking at how deposits form and how they occur. And one of the underlying factors was the kind of spatial distribution that you see that these deposits occur along. And one of them that struck me as very obvious was Yanacocha in Peru. It was this very large, one of the world's largest gold mines that had multiple pits, but all in a line like spider bites, just basically running along a suture or basically a plume or a structural corridor. And the same thing occurred to me is what was happening at our bordering KSM list of deposits from Seabridge. So from the discovery of Valley of the Kings, I was able to study and watch all the development that was happening next door with Seabridge, and really early kind of recognize that there was a pulse and a frequency between these events, all these deposits. So I took it forward, and when I did the audit, I came on with actually, ironically, a Teuton was one of the first companies I worked for up here. He was the underlying Dino Cremonese and Roman Cremonese were the underlying owners of a lot of packages of really key ground in the triangle. But when I was working for them specifically in 2018, came across this project at the request of Dino to have a look coming back home to see my old treaty project, which I worked on in, well, what was it, 1986, 87, 88. But in the end, looked at the original Konkin gold zone and realized that it was going the other way. It wasn't coming across towards, say, the Goldstorm discovery, which was discovered from a single drill hole that I recognized, a lithologically hosted event that could only be described as being an intrusive hosted or intrusive related or a porphyry system. So everybody was chasing at the time a shear hosted structures that were in the Copper Bell region. Ironically, Copper Bell didn't have much copper, but it did have some nice gold in shear holes, in basically in faults. But this was completely different, and that's why I agreed to come on board with Walter. So we came to terms in 2018 at Christmas, and then came forward in 2019 and started working with Walter. And I basically built up the team from scratch and basically imported some people that I'd known from years of working at Pretium, including bringing on Joe Ovsnick and Ken McNaughton as our advisors. So very important that we're almost putting the band back together, if you will, and including Bob Court. I mean, he came on as an investor. So it was good to see that everybody recognized and validated this to be a very viable, advanced project in the triangle on a very important structural corridor that's extremely became predictable. To say, for example, we predicted where Goldstorm would be. We turned the drills around 180 degrees and went the opposite direction. So in 2019, we started out with a aggressive 21 drill hole program with only one drill and very little money. And that was what basically Eric Sprott had provided. But as soon as he came in for an extra, I think it was an extra $1 million, we were able to get a second drill halfway through, and we were able to complete only 14 drill holes because we never ever cleared the bottom of the deposit. We never cleared through. We ended every hole in mineralization, basically. So that set the stage for our success, where we ramped up finally after hitting hole 47. We demonstrated we had over a kilometer of strike, basically of intercept, that we had more than 2, 3, 4 domains. And some very good intercepts came out of that initially. And I think a lot of speculation drove the market to go from basically 20 cents when I started up to $4.51, I think was the highest trade in the heyday based on that. But in the end, we stuck to our guns and drilled off what would be I think could very well be the largest gold discovery in 3 decades. We're close. If we hit 27 million ounces gold only, that would be the number we're aiming for. So that's what I want to try and achieve here. If we can put that on a shirt or a hat, that'd be great. If not, I'm really happy with what we've accomplished so far, which is an outstanding, very strong resource.
And what is the current resource?
We're standing at the one that I use is a bit different in my mind because I've got a different vision for the project than most people. But we're not here to create an ounce war with any company or say we've got this many ounces. I'm more of a believer of robust mineable ounces. That's a very critical distinction than just having in-ground ounces. We came up with an initial resource after only 2 years of drilling. And to show how far we stepped out, we'd gone forward 800 meters or a kilometer, and we came up with this resource of about 19 million ounces of 0.74, which I wasn't a big fan of a gold equivalent because I just didn't like the fact it was under a gram. So my goal was to reverse engineer the exploration programs and only target things that would make us get over the gram mark. So 2 years after that, sure enough, we sat down and designed program after program in 2022 and even 2023 and 2021. That wasn't included. The drilling of the initial resource was only 2019 and 2020. So it was the 21 and 22 were what added on to the current resource, which is now standing at 23.4 million ounces of gold equivalent M&I. And let me just check that. What is it? It's also in the inferred category, is sitting there about 7.3. So, clearly we could have come out with a higher number had we used the traditional cutoffs of, say, 0.3 for the in pit and out of pit being the sub-level block cave of 0.35. We initially came out with the resource at a 0.46 underground, knowing that costs were going up and they were not going to come back. So I decided early to give it a much higher, basically benchmark to make the resource as most robust as possible. So what we've done is we've taken the 0.3 cutoff and gone to 0.5. So a half a gram cutoff on gold equivalent is what our current resource is set at for pit, and 0.7, which is double the 0.35, is what people generally use for underground for sub-level block cave or bulk tonnage mining methods. So with that 0.7, we still came up with basically 23.4 million ounces of gold equivalent. But the big add-on was, and this was the part that I'm probably most proud of, we become so adaptable. And initially we wanted just gold only, and we knew we had a copper target. We didn't concentrate on it until we actually looked at it, what would really make a robust set of numbers here. We actually are now 100% concentrating on one of the best domains we've got, the largest domain. It's the one that's copper and gold split between the values. And it's the one that I think is going to be the center stage for all the mine development running forward. So it was one of those things where coming out with that resource, but my initial comment of my view of what the resource should be, I'm looking at a 1 gram cutoff in my mind. So I don't look at the 0.5 or the 0.7, even at a 1 gram. And this is in our presentation. I really encourage everybody to go look at this sheet and look at the 1 gram cutoff, because with that, we're sitting at 15.2 million ounces, but the grade is 1.48. So that is a shocking number that we've gone from a 0.74 initial to now I'm looking at doing these strong cutoffs where we're going to probably verge on knocking that number into the 20 million category of ounces equivalent, but trying to maintain something closer to a 1.5 gram average. And basically the current average grade is of that 23.4 is 1.13, which is still, that's a great number. We're over the 1 gram number. It's definitely a mineable project in my mind. Anybody that works for me knows that it's only a question of how big is the mine. It is a mine in my mind. And going forward, we need to de-risk this thing. So that to me was a turning point, a very, very important pivotal moment in the company where we decided that everything we now do is going to be for the design of being one of the biggest producers globally, if not North America, then for sure North America, Canada. We want to be in the #1 position if possible going forward, but let's just see how this works out. We've done our 2-year baseline studies, so we're set to go forward with finishing off the shape and finishing off, basically fleshing out the center of mass for the strongest mineralization as we head to the northeast is where we're at with these drills. We got 6 drills on site currently.
Yeah. For the listeners, I will put a link at the end of the description of the podcast that'll link you to that presentation that Ken just referred to. What I love about your drilling is it keeps increasing and de-risking this project and makes it look increasingly more and more viable as we go forward, and to the point where last week you came out with some pretty remarkable results yet again.
Yeah, great. That's a great point, Michael. I think the viewers need, or the listeners need, to understand one really important point. This year's program was predicated on 2 things: is filling in large holes that were basically in that beautiful indicated or drill inferred category that had drill holes that were beyond 200 meters, and one of them, ironically, is my all-time favorite hole. It took 2 years to drill. Was GS 113 wedge 2. When we wedged off that thing and got some outstanding looking mineralization, we couldn't complete it in 2021 because we couldn't get down to the bottom. So we came in with a larger drill. In the end, that drill on the CS600, just to show you how robust that thing was, just that alone was 732 meters of 1.6 gold equivalent. Now, that was close to a gram of gold, so 0.91 gold only, and then over 0.5% copper, 0.53. However, none of this made M&I. This wasn't measured and indicated. This wasn't drill indicated. This was all inferred. So this doesn't even make that bigger inferred number that we're talking about with that 1 gram. So you can imagine what this would do. So all of the success from that hole, we're playing off of that success on this program. So in July 10th, we came out with a step out. First thing, we launched 150 meters forward on a 2 big domains DS5. In hole 164, we knocked off 412.5 meters of over a gram, 1.101, with a core portion running 124.5 meters. So 125 meters, basically a 1.51. So again, over 1.5 gram. So you're seeing a theme here. So I'm not going after these monster intercepts that we had earlier on at 113 and announcing these, 1,497.5 meters of 1.12. We're not doing that anymore. We're taking each domain and treating it such, like a mine within a mine. So on that, even with CS600 on the same July 10th press release, we came out with 337.5 meters of 1.31 gold equivalent. Now that had also close to a 0.9 gram gold with a 0.32 copper percent in that hole of 337. So now you're seeing that playoff is so strong, it's coming forward 150 meters later. So, but you can even tighten that up. You can even look at that 337.5 meters and go to, say, sub 100 meters of 94.5 meters, and you can pull out 1.8 gram gold equivalent. Now that gold alone is 1.14. That's higher than our total gold equivalent number. That's gold only of that 100 meters, and 0.47. So we're getting close to 0.5%. So there's your theme. The theme is we are expanding the volume without sacrificing grade. It's going the other way. Most companies would go out and push their envelope to get more ounces, but they sacrifice grade. They drop the economics of the project, which I think is the wrong thing to do here. I think we're going to go the other way. We're going to expand the volume, but we're going to have the highlight, the spotlight, be on the sweet spots that we can start mining. Now, who knows what happens with the price of metals going forward, but we can only deal with the now and the today. So running forward now, and the one you've mentioned is a great second consecutive step up, and this one's well outside the resource area on section 120 plus 50. So we've launched way northeast of what we had at the end of 2022, and we came out with a monster hit of 516 meters of 1.19. So now we're getting up close to 1.2 of over half a kilometer here on CS600 with a core. The center portion, again, concentrate on that, about half of that, 210 meters is 1.48. There's that number, 1.48 again, which is my 1 gram cutoff, right? So none of this is part of that resource, including basically all the inferred aspects. So this is now painting out a new volumetric curvilinear wedge of material that's in the hundreds of meters. So we'll see how this ends. So we're just on our second press release, working on our third one. Once we get through that, we're feverishly drilling to the end to try and cover off as much of that basically drill inferred into the drill indicated category, because that's what you get measured on. That's the one everybody stands up and says, well, is it really drill indicated or not? And that's a little more difficult now. You have to have 4 drill holes that see each other, not 3. So between 100 meters to 200 meters, the variogram is very well defined here. And the most important part, and this is the saying I've kind of adopted from everybody's cliche of saying, you know, on every mine, grade is king. But in this case, if grade is king, then surely consistency must be queen. And do we have consistency? So consistently, the resource is growing in the direction to the north, but also it's coming up in grades creeping up, but all within parameters of being very comparable to the last 150 meter section. So what I'm kind of alluding to is grade control is a no-brainer on this one. So when I de-risk projects, I looked at things like Pratium, and a lot of people said to us, Valley of the Kings. By the way, I gave it that name, Valley of the Kings. It was one of those things I was sitting there on 2010 trying to figure out an acronym to describe the gully we were drilling between Electrum Ridge and Galena Hill. And it came to me that VOK was a great acronym for Valley of the Kings, to label that on a sheet. But that grade control, a lot of people said was impossible. What they didn't realize is we were able to stitch together and look through 3-4 sections to make it predictable. You could predict those pulses, and you could predict the block of rock that would be that kind of grades would occur in. In this case, this is a much more homogeneous environment that the porphyry, the intrusive, all of it becomes extremely predictable. We also have a slide that's, it may be in the appendix of our, in the deck we have for a presentation. It shows the CS600 historical drilling. If you look at the very southern and you work your way to the north, all the grades are slightly increasing until you get to these great holes like the one I mentioned, 113W2. But the most important thing, midway on the right-hand side of that slide of showing all those values, the numbers are absolutely identical. 2 holes, 200 meters apart. They were identical holes. And I'll tell you the ones to look at. It'll be on my current brochure. I hope they didn't take it out. They were threatening to take this thing out. But here it is here. Look at holes number 158 and 133. I'll just read them to you. 158 runs 1.5 grams gold equivalent over, looks like 235 meters. And 200 meters to the south of that, hole 133 runs 1.52 over 237.5. So within 2.5 meters of the intercept, it's basically the identical number. But the spooky part is the copper is identical. They're both at 0.49%. The silver is identical. One is 3.98, one is 3.97. And the gold is bang on, 0.89 and 0.87. So when you talk about consistency, you could not have possibly picked a more consistent set of numbers in all 3 elements. So for me, it's very much a point of going forward and continuing with the finishing off of the shape, the mining method we're going to use, and all running up to your segue is what we're going to do next is complete the drilling on Goldstorm and then take it to the next phase, which is going to be clearly a preliminary economic assessment.
The drill program for this summer, is it fully funded?
Yes, it is absolutely. We were very fortunate that we oversubscribed completely when we did it. Because typically we like to do two raises, one in the spring, one in the fall, and spread the risk on pricing, whatever. But in this case, we saw such an overrun on the stock. We in 6 hours. I mean, we initially opened up. I think we announced we wanted 10 million. But we were running. We had the book at well over 20. It was crazy. So the board of directors decided that we'd clawed back to say 15 with the green shoe came in. We sawed it off at $18.5 million raised to go forward. And we had some other funds from other things like basically tax rebates, that sort of thing. But in the end, the GST came back from previous drilling. So we have all this is funded going forward. But looking forward to this for 20, we're just sitting here doing the plan for 2024, what we need to do if we didn't catch all of it, how much more drilling will be needed, how many more dollars will be needed. All that will be decided probably in the next 2 to 3 weeks here of what we do going forward. But I think we're in good shape right now. But my goal is looking forward is when you get to something this large, once you start that burn ratio on dollars spent on big programs, you have different aspects you have to look at, different special skill sets that come in, like mine site location, how you actually the processing plant, what exact processing plant will you use? All of these things take significant funds. But what we did is just to kind of give you a bit of a backdrop on a spin out that didn't have much to do with the ground up here up at Treaty Creek to the south. We've got the same analog geology happening down by the old Grand Duke Mill site on the Electrum project and the Crown, which is the direct southern extension of Brucejack and KSM. So that I thought would be a wonderful spin out, which worked out beautifully because everybody who had 4 shares of Tudor Gold was given 1 share of the new Goldstorm Metals Corp. So I named it after the mother of all deposits, Goldstorm Deposit, became the daughter company, Goldstorm Metals Corp. And the point of the story is when we were giving the pitch, I actually pitched a great company I'm a big fan of, is Skeena, because I like their approach. I like their way of dealing with all their stakeholders. I think they've done a great job of advancing that program and very like-minded to my philosophies. Anyways, I pitched them on the idea of this, or they want to see the presentation, which I'm just giving you now. They loved it. At the time, we're stocked up with money. We didn't need it. But I said, well, wait a minute. Wait until you see the southern extension. They loved it. They came in for 9.9% immediately and jumped in on that one. So that became the type of a model I'm looking at with a strategic alliance. So you take a real small junior tiny market cap of 16 to 20 million dollar market cap, and you hit yourself to a great company like Skeena. Well, likewise, so we'll be looking at doing the same thing with Treaty because we haven't finished it yet. We don't want to let go of the reins. However, I think it's a very astute strategy to take a page out of my Goldstorm Metals Corp handbook of business and line ourselves up with one of the big boys that can come in and look at this and do it justice eventually. But we'd like to be the exploration arm and complete the other targets on that trend I was talking to you about to the north, where I'm sitting here out of this office. I'm calling you out of this lower camp, which is the calm before the storm. So CBS is a great target that we've got identified with some really nice drill holes into it, but we left it to the end because it is a lower level target. But clearly, Goldstorm is a monster and it took precedence, just like it took precedence from, say, Perfect Storm. So we are currently drilling Perfect Storm. We've got some good intercepts that we're waiting for values. Well, hopefully we've got some good joy on that one we can announce shortly. But that's what's going to happen is after Goldstorm is going to be basically stitched off, and we've got the basic any kind of pit configuration worked out, the geotechnical worked out, all the geochemistry worked out of all the various pulses of the deposit. Once all that is solved, then basically it's the bigger companies that will be looking at that de-risk project. So going to a PEA for that is definitely in the cards here. And then continuing the drive of adding ounces in value for all these other satellite targets I mentioned, including Eureka. Because Eureka has another potential. One thing I never thought about, a way of solving the Rubik's Cube, is attaching it to a different deposit. So I can't talk too much about it. It's in kind of the infancy of the gestation of that interpretation, I'll call it. But that to me is something that can really add value as everybody says, well, you've got 24 million ounces of gold equivalent, of which arguably at a 1 gram cutoff, you're sitting at 15 million. Well, if you push that to 20 million, at that point, sooner or later, I think adding a million ounce here or there won't really, move the dial on the stock or the value. However, discovery of one of these other satellite targets is a game changer. So we'll continue our push. We'll continue our fight with finding as much minerals as we possibly can to give our shareholders by far the best bang for the buck. And I think it is really an amazing thing to see us at about $1 right now trading. That this is on the eve of going to a PEA coming up. I think is a phenomenal opportunity for anybody to come in. And likewise, our basically Gold Storm Metals Corp, our call sign GSTM. But I guess GMC was taken. They wouldn't give it to me. I don't know why. But in the end, I think it's, yeah. When you go hunt for a pickup truck, that was my goal, that someone would see our blog pop up. But in the end, I think it's going to be a really a great Fast and Furious end to this year. I'm looking forward to sitting down with our technical team and sitting down with our engineering firm and again reverse engineering what's going to take to make this thing happen and push as hard as we can.
Yes, exciting times indeed for the company. Is there anything else that we haven't covered today that we probably should?
No, just continue de-risking, right? Just work with all First Nations, work with our access, get our road connected through Highway 37, and yeah, all of that is being currently constructed right as we speak, and Power Line 2 by Seabridge to their tails facility. So I think we're in really good shape here. I think it's time that we get eyes from people who are good at taking a project at this level and turning it into a mine. We're getting close to where we'll be going to development after we get to the feasibility, of course. And we're thinking that it's so large that it may take a pre-feas stage. We're actually just looking at that, what we, foreshadowing what we need to do here to do this as quickly as possible. Permitting is going to be a big issue going forward. So I think it's all these things we're bringing people on side to take on these special skill sets that require success, like we just did at Pretium at Valley of the Kings. We'll basically be repeating that history.
Wonderful. And if people want to follow the story, how would they get in touch with you and follow the company?
Online, you can get a hold of Chris Kern, and he can actually direct you right to me. I'll be probably either halfway between our Vancouver office. You're welcome. Come down. We've got rocks in the office. We've got tours all the time happening for investor tours. So clearly, anybody that wants to see this can get in touch with us, and we welcome it. We welcome you coming on site and seeing our wonderful core facility. It's a rock machine, really it is, in Stewart. We fly all the core out, so you can see it 12 months of the year. We can access that facility in the middle of winter and just turn the heat on and basically turn the lights on in the place. It's a remote setting about 10, 12 kilometers outside the town site of Stewart, British Columbia. So it's an easy thing to get to look at. But like I say, it just takes it takes 1/3, it's a simple thing here, Michael. It's 1/3 the project's got to be there. 1/3 you really need the technical team to pull it off. And then the other 1/3 is what we're reaching out to get the investors. We're trying to reach out for that money aspect. Without that, the other 2/3 just don't simply work. So I think we've covered off the first 2/3. We just have to hunt down that one missing piece, that 1/3 to the puzzle, and we've got a pretty much solved Rubik's Cube here.
Wonderful. Thanks very much for joining me, Ken, and I look forward to chatting with you in the coming months as more results come available and this project continues to get de-risked.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Michael. It's a pleasure talking to you.
You bet. The Prospector News podcast is for educational purposes only. The opinions expressed are those of the participants and are not to be taken as investment advice. Listeners need to do their own due diligence and seek advice of a licensed investment advisor.